We're back with Inside Florida Politics. John, we're going to start with you. The Florida primary is not that far away, March 15th. It's a winner-take-all. So for whoever wins it, it's going to be important. But we got a couple of favorite sons in this and some others who call Florida their home, one way or the other. But how important to the winner of this primary will winning Florida be to their chances to be president?
Well, I think it's going to be a pretty significant milestone on this pretty chaotic presidential campaign on the Republican side. The Florida significance is that it's going to be the biggest of the winner-take-all states on that day. And that day also is the first day that candidates can go to a state where it is winner-take-all. So whoever wins Florida is going to, suddenly get a monster number of delegates. 99 delegates are coming out of Florida to that Republican winner. So that's going to be something that can really separate that candidate from the rest of the field, arguably, because up until then, there's going to be proportionate sharing of delegates in all the states that precede. Going back to when this was designed, I think there was a feeling that this was going to be the primary that puts Jeb Bush over the top. Now, there's a possibility that this primary could be the primary that kills Jeb Bush's candidacy if he does not win.
Could it be the primary that puts Donald Trump over the top?
Sure.
I've just got to ask that question.
It's so unpredictable. First of all, Trump is making noise again about the possibility of running as a third-party independent candidate, which means now there will be a, quote, an establishment Republican under that scenario. It could be Jeb Bush. It doesn't look like it. It could be Marco Rubio. I have a slightly different view of this whole thing. All of us in the media and the public and the political establishment always talks about how Florida's a linchpin state, the nation's biggest battleground state, key state in presidential elections. But if neither Bush nor Rubio turns out to be a big factor in terms of getting the Republican nomination, people would rightly scratch their heads and say, so what's the big deal about Florida? You guys, you've got two plausible candidates for the Republican nomination coming out of that state, and neither one of them could get to the finish line. I think we have that scenario, we're staring at that scenario right now.
Mary Ellen, could the presence of both former Governor Bush and Senator Marco Rubio on the same ballot, could they drain votes away from each other?
Well, I think that's exactly what I was thinking about, is that there will be the potential that this is a really divided, the results are divided, and whoever doesn't get gets a plurality is inevitable, and not a majority out of Florida. But I think the question I have is, while all the polls continue to show that Donald Trump overshadows Jeb Bush, and certainly Jeb Bush and even more Marco Rubio, where's the passion? Are people going to show up at the polls because they really want to see Donald Trump as their president? And I think that's the difference. You've got the traditional people that are the reliable voters that I think are the ones that are more likely to be the ones that Jeb and Marco pull. And it seems to me that will make the difference. For that reason, I think that Marco has the edge.
Jim, Mary Ellen just used the word passion. And so far, this race for president has had a lot of passion involved in it. Trump's brought a lot to it. He seems to embody what people are calling populist passion. And let's talk about Florida for a minute. Are there issues in Florida that someone might grab onto running for president that spark this kind of passion? And it might be issues that are extant in the entire country. But what do you all think? Are there certain issues that somebody could grab onto and say, I'm running for president because of this, and turn on Florida
Well, I
voters?
think the wild card is, we're in December now, and the primary is 3 months away. Where is this terrorism issue at that point? Where the immigration issue at that point?
Okay.
Trump has obviously captured a lot of people. A lot of people are identifying with some of the things he's saying about those comments. No matter how controversial he may be about it, a lot of people are identifying with that, and there is passion there. And one of the things that Jeb has been criticized for throughout this campaign is not showing passion, not being able to actually connect with voters. And so I think, we're going to have to see how that plays out. But if that's still a front burner issue, the front burner issue, it could change the dynamics of that race. I mean, Rubio actually is maybe in a little bit better position than Jeb is to seize on that issue. But people are, again, it's just a passionate issue for a lot of people, and people are scared.
I agree with Jim on those points, and also on immigration, obviously, is an issue that in Florida a candidate can exploit. This being such a diverse melting pot of a state with a lot of friction that comes out of that at times. The other thing that's a little bit of an awkwardism maybe for the Republican candidates as they campaign in Florida is the economy and the state of the economy. We've heard candidates blasting the Obama administration and the recovery nationwide as not good enough. How will they look at that as it plays in Florida, where Governor Rick Scott takes a lot of the credit for this state's recovery and job creation? There's a little bit of a disconnect there, like in that they can't come to Florida and say, your state is suffering just like the rest of this nation because we're not growing as fast as we should be. Well, that kind of turns the microscope a little bit over to Rick Scott then and his performance. So I think they'll have to kind of navigate that a little carefully.
We haven't mentioned Hillary once, okay, and she still has good numbers in Florida, and you do head-to-heads with any number of Republican candidates nationwide or in Florida. It's close, and but she leads in a lot of them. Based on your reading of polls and head-to-heads and fundraising numbers, she could take this state in the general election. Do you agree?
Yeah, I mean, it does appear that, and it's very interesting because while we have an important primary, she's not worried about it because it's pretty evident she has done very little to build to show much presence here in the state. We've actually written about that she's just kind of been AWOL. She doesn't have a lot of offices set up. She's really kind of holding her fire in Florida. So she's obviously not worried about the primary, but it's pretty clear that when it comes to the general, I think we will likely see more activity from her, and Florida will be crucial for her then.
I think one of the dangers for the Republican Party is what happened, a repeat of 2012. I mean, Romney had to run primaries while Obama didn't. He had to spend a ton of money, and he got pulled to the right and said some things that came back to haunt him big time. And if this continues, the Republican presidential primary continues the way it's going, Hillary can sit back, she can bank money, and she doesn't have to get out there on a limb on some of these issues. Meanwhile, the Republican nominee, whether it's because of the Florida primary or the whole string of primaries, may come out of it wounded, and then she's sitting in a pretty good position at that point.
Good warning. Okay, let's get out the crystal balls. Steve, I'm going to start with you. Make you the first victim of this. It's still a long way away, but any prediction as to who wins the Florida primary?
Looking at it today, again, without having the benefit of the next 3 months down the road, I'm going to say it's going to be Donald Trump. Donald Trump has a commanding lead in every poll you look at. And keep in mind, people in Florida we're a melting pot. They're from all over the country. You go to Pasco County, you meet a guy from Michigan. You go to Destin, you meet somebody from Virginia. Voters in this state in presidential politics take their cue from what they see in the national media, and that's got to be a good thing for Trump.
Marilyn?
I think Marco Rubio, for the reasons I referred to before, I think he's got the establishment. I think he's got the issues. I think it's going to be a squeaker. I think Donald Trump will be number two, but I'm saying Rubio's going to edge it out.
John?
Well, I'll still go with Trump just on the fact that he has such a commanding lead right now that that could clearly diminish in coming weeks. But he looks like a hard guy to beat right now.
And Jim?
I think Rubio. I think that the field will shake out a little bit, and then when it gets to Florida, there'll be fewer candidates. And Rubio's run a good campaign. I mean, he's and he's taken advantage of Jeb's fall off, and I think he's going to be pretty well positioned.
Let me close on a personal note. This is my last show with Capital Dateline and Capital Dateline Inside Florida Politics. I couldn't close with a better show with a better group of people. This has been our favorite show, and the people who view this show love it. So thank you, Steve, Mary Ellen, John, and Jim, for joining us and sharing your expertise. I'd also like to thank the folks at All Florida Media Works. You can't see them, they're invisible, but they're all around us here, taking pictures and getting the sound right and editing. I'd also like to say to you, thank you for viewing, thank you for visiting us. God bless you.